Welcome to a study of the Gospel of John, lesson number 21, which consists of the pericopes entitled in the NIV, the crucifixion, the death of Jesus, the burial of Jesus, and the empty tomb. John 19:16b to 20, verse 9. The crucifixion. John 19:16b to 27. For an event which changed the course of many thousands of years of history. As a matter of fact, changed the course of history from the creation to the end. The final judgment we know very little about. And what we don't know is the exact way people were crucified. It was one of those things that people, everybody in the empire knew what crucifixion was. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Sometimes seems that everyone knew. It was like the old story of the elephant in the dining room. Everybody knew the elephant was there, but they didn't talk about it. The Romans did not invent it because that went back 1,000 years or more and is attributed to a king of Transylvania called Vlad, that's V-L-A-D, the Impaler. And we won't go into the details of what he did. The tradition attributes this invention to this Balkan king. They did not use the form of the cross that has become so familiar, traditional, in the minds of modern believers, with the center post sticking up above the cross arm. They used the so-called tau, or level cross arm on top. In fact, probably the reason the place was called Golgotha, the place of death, was that the center post was permanent and that each individual person executed carried their own crossbeam, and it was mortise and tenon into the top of the upright. From my study of the subject, I have come to believe that the central posts, as I said, were permanent in the ground. No wonder they called it the place of death, for that's what Golgotha really means. Just like the skull and crossbones on poison. I can remember as a child, we didn't have antibiotics and antibiotic creams and things. We had iodine, and it scared the life out of me because the iodine bottle had a skull and crossbones on it. And after we would have our baths in the evening, my dad would get the bottle out, the skull and crossbones, and put it on our wounds. But it was more horrible than that. Crucifixion was deliberately aimed at humiliating and demeaning the culprit. Whether there was a permanent squad of soldiers detailed for this task, or a squad was appointed by the governor for each execution. It so happens nobody knows. There's been people espouse both positions, but all that means is nobody knows. Pilate had the last word in his attempt to exert his authority against the Jewish leaders. He placed a placard above Jesus' cross, which read in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." The leaders wanted to prefix the statement with the words "he claimed" or "he said." But the pettiness of Pilate comes out when he said, "What I have written, I have written." John wants his readers to understand that the language of fulfillment is not intended to prove the Bible, that it is divine, but to demonstrate that Jesus is the promised Messiah. The Roman game of casting lots using 3 dice, the winning highest throw was called a Venus, which was 3 sixes. Jesus' mother, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala were standing near enough to his cross to engage with conversation with him. This is a scene almost too horrible to contemplate. Mary, who had such great hopes for her firstborn son, talking to him while standing at the foot of his cross. But as a good eldest son, he made provision for his mother to move into the household of John the Apostle. And then comes the death of Jesus, John 19:28 through 37. After several hours on the cross, he realized that he had accomplished everything his Father had sent him to earth to do, and to demonstrate that it was the incarnate Son of God who was dying for the redemption of the creation. He said, "I am thirsty." No room for Gnosticism here. He was a human being, fully human, who was thirsty. One of the soldiers gave him a sponge soaked in vinegar. During my 65 years of ministry, I have watched while 100 or more human beings died, and none of them surrendered without resistance at the cellular level of their bodies. I remember one time when I was serving as a volunteer chaplain at the old Bexar County Hospital. There was a man who had been sleeping on the railroad track and had his body amputated just above or around the hip joint. He was bandaged up, and the reason I remember that so vividly is one of the nurses asked for me to come to where she was because she didn't think anybody ought to die alone. And we held his hands while he passed away. But he resisted. His very cells resisted. But Jesus, the only human being who commanded the power to resist dying, didn't. He gave up the ghost. He gave up his spirit and died. Pericope 3, the burial of Jesus. John 19:38 through 41. The Jews were very meticulous in their burial customs. They still are. A decade or two ago, the New York Jewish community made the powerful Gravediggers Union back down and work on the Sabbath in order to get the dead into the ground within 24 hours. After the death of Jesus was legally determined, two members of the Sanhedrin, who were secret followers of Jesus, asked Pilate for possession of the body, and Pilate gave it to them. They brought 75 pounds of burial spices, which they covered the body and wrapped it loosely in fine linen strips. They placed it on the bench of a nearby rock-hewn tomb and closed the entrance with a heavy rolling stone. The tomb was in the garden just north of the north wall of the city. There is every historical reason to believe that the present Cathedral of the Holy Sepulchre is built on the site. And they waited for the preparation day to end. Thank you.